1 week before the child's birthday, the child's parents began preparations for his birthday. Daniel, the child, was turning 10. It was in the summer, close to the time school was beginning its fall session. Daniel was excited about turning 10, but he was at odds with himself starting back to school. 5th grade was shaping up to be a different year. Miss Hurley was the new principal, replacing the previous principal. He had never even walked down the 5th grade hallway. His parents spoke of hiring a clown or magician, but Daniel didn't want something so childish as a clown or magician. He was almost too proud to admit that he did want the bouncy castle, but prepared himself to tell them that he didn't want that. Daniel walked into the kitchen to speak to his mom about the bouncy castle. "Mom, I want a..." Daniel stammered over his own words. "I want the band Wolfpack to play at my party," Daniel said. "But I don't want..." "The clown?" his mom asked. "Yes," he said. No, I don't want a clown. They are so creepy." His mother laughed. About that time, the doorbell rang. Now who could that be? Daniel's great aunt Frances was at the door. Frances is old and shakes when she talks. She painstakingly speaks. "I can't stay, but I want the big Dido, to have his Buddha gift early." She came to give the birthday gift early, but she seemed to have no intention of staying. She looked at the nervous boy and kisses. She turns and begins to leave. "Wait, would you like to come in and rest?" the mother says. "No, Ma," the boy whispers. "She's creepy." "I have to go. Woo-bye," the old lady says. After everyone, but the nervous Daniel, says goodbye, he asks his parents who she was. They explain that the woman is his great aunt Frances. The boy's father, who was still holding the box, says, "She used to work in an old toy company. I knew she had moved to Africa, but she never spoke to the family after she moved. I had thought she had..." The father stopped himself and looked at his son. "Didn't you have friends over today?" "Yes, but what about..." He motioned his head in the direction of the old lady. "I'll tell you more about her later." "Okay, Dad." A week later, the week flew by as party plans were being made, and the boy was getting ready for school. Daniel often thought of the elderly Aunt Frances. Who was she really? Where did she come from? And whose side of the family did she come from? So many questions came about the boy's mind, but had never gotten around to asking, and when he did, nothing was really answered about it. The bouncy council was ordered, which Daniel secretly hoped for, but was too afraid to have. "My friends may see me as childish," he thought to himself. "On the other hand, I'll be the coolest boy in the 5th grade if everyone likes it as much as I do." He finished getting ready for his big birthday party. As he placed his hands upon the door, he heard the slight sound of music playing from down the street. "Circus music?" he thought to himself. "Dad, you didn't get a creepy clown, did you?" He quickly ran to his window to see, his heart racing and pounding at the sheer thought of a clown. "Not at my party," he said to himself. As he watched the street, an ice cream truck rolled by, with a sigh of relief expelling from his lips. "I was afraid of a stupid ice cream truck. Stupid, stupid," he said as he smacked himself in the forehead. He ran down to see Marcia and some of his other friends coming through the door for the party. He glanced over to see a stack of presents on the table. A big smile appeared on the young boy's face. My party, my presents, my girl, a bouncy castle, and no clowns in sight. This will be the greatest day of my life. The day resumed as one would expect a party to go on. Playing outside in the ball pit was a favorite among everyone. He was going to be the most popular fifth grader in school. Everyone ate before opening the gifts, mostly so the parents could enjoy some food before it turned gold. When it came time to open the presents, everyone was excited, but no one near as excited as Daniel. Present after present was placed in his hands. The wrapping paper was piled in a pile next to the garbage can. The last gift was a box wrapped in black and dark red paper. Daniel's father placed it in front of him to unwrap. But as soon as the present hit the ground, a muffled, high-pitched laugh came from the box. The room became a little more silent as he began to unwrap the laughing present. The box looked like it came from the 1950s. The coarse, papered box had a picture of a cute little ball of fur on the sides. "Furby," said Daniel out loud. "What the heck is a Furby?" The mother said it can be your best friend when nobody is around. Her friendly demeanor was apparent, but it didn't make the boy feel any more comfortable. He opened the box and pulled out a black Furby with a white stomach. It had a guide with it. The guide had "You're a Motortronic Friend" written on it. "It looks pretty cool," Daniel said. "Let's go eat some cake now," said Johnny. Sarah, Marcia, James, and finally everyone said the same thing, or was agreeing to it. Everyone jumped up off the ground and ran to the kitchen to eat ice cream. Daniel also started to get up, but the black Furby said "boo" in its cute little voice. "I don't understand what this toy is saying." He then handed it to his father and began to run off. "Buddha," the boy spoke in an almost monotone way. The father set the toy down on the table and began to walk off. He looked back at the toy and noticed the toy was facing away from him. "Did I set that thing down like that?" he said. The toy's ears dropped with a metallic grinding sound that sounded nothing like he had ever heard before. After some time, the boy and the toy began to get close. They would talk and play like any other child's friend. The father noticed that his friends came over less and less. Upon going back to school, Daniel carried this toy to school with him. He started getting in trouble at school, but some of the things he got in trouble for seemed to be something that an adult would do. Breaking the school's backboards of the basketball hoops, setting fire to the cafeteria stoves, and even got in trouble for hitting a teacher and leaving a burn upon her skin are but a few of the things he was accused of. The worse it became, the more that Daniel kept himself in his room. The father knew it was a crazy notion, but he figured that the toy caused a major change in his son's life. One night, he went to check on his son by sneaking into his room. Daniel was asleep with his arms crossed like a stereotypical vampire. The father spotted the toy sitting on the boy's nightstand. His eyes were closed, but he could swear the toy was snoring. He gently grabbed the toy and headed downstairs with it. He set it on the living room table to examine it. The Furby's eyes slowly opened. "Hi," the toy said. "Hi yourself, you creepy thing," the father said in a joking manner. "Buddha," the toy again spoke. "Buddha, Ralph. How did you know my real name?" "Your son," said the toy in a much more lifelike manner. "You really are a creepy toy. Blood, fire, time," said the toy. "What?" said the shocked man out loud. A few moments passed when the shocked man finally came back to his senses. "What are you?" A moment of silence was broken when the toy finally spoke again. My name is Degdeer, and I am hungry. The Furby spoke in the voice of Aunt Frances. Aunt Frances? The man said, is that you? After a few moments of silence, the man was about to speak again. But before he could, the fire alarm went off in the kitchen. The man ran to the kitchen, and flames were shooting from every area there. An explosion blew the man backwards a few feet, and he fell on his back, hitting the back of his head on the living room table that had the Furby on it. The man looked up with a blurred set of eyes to see the fuzzy figure of the Furby staring right back at him. Good night, Ralph, the Furby said in the same familiar voice of the old Aunt Frances. As the man began to lose consciousness, he heard his wife, but couldn't make anything out. Several months later. Later on, Ralph awoke in the hospital with a groggy feel to him. As he began to realize where he was, his eyes blurred together to see the Furby on the table at the end of his bed. He jumped a little and saw nothing once he could see properly. Lauren, his wife, started to enter the room. "Ralph!" she exclaimed as she began to hurry to his side. "They said that we would have to pull the plug on you. They said you were brain dead." Ralph soon realized that he was tied down and hooked up to a lot of hospital machines to keep him alive. After some time in recovery and a lot of visitations from his wife and son, he recovered enough to begin talking, and is no longer hooked up to anything but a basic IV and other such machines. "What happened that night?" Ralph asked his wife. "They don't know what happened." "Did that creepy Furby get destroyed?" "I was dragging you out when I saw the fire consume that thing," she said. "You were lucky to get out of there." A few years passed from the incident. Daniel is now in his sweet 16s. He doesn't remember much of that time in his life. His father had had several strokes and is now disabled. His mother started to work to keep up the family finances. They now live in a much smaller house. Daniel comes home from school with his girlfriend Marcia and notices his father sitting where he normally sits since that day, watching TV as usual. Daniel goes to check on his dad and begins to smell smoke. "Marcia, could you go check the kitchen to see if anything is burning? I need to check my father." "Sure." "Be careful," he said as he ran over to Ralph. He looked at his father, but he was asleep. He looked around for a moment and saw an area on the coffee table that looked like melted plastic. "Father, what happened here?" Ralph didn't flinch. "Father, everything seems to be okay in the kitchen, but there's something strange on the table," Marcia said as she entered the room. Daniel gazed at his father for a moment and noticed him moving some, but he remained sound asleep. They moved on to the kitchen and saw a journal on the table that was open with what appeared to be melted plastic fibers that were burnt on the ends. He moved closer to the journal and saw only one line that forced his curiosity to read more. "I saw that damned Furby again today. If I tell anyone about this, they will throw me in the nut ward and throw away the key. Who would believe that I'm being haunted by a toy with the voice of my great aunt? So, my great aunt Frances is from my father's side of the family? That would make her my great great aunt. But how old is she? How old was she when she came to my party?" "Daniel, you look pale. Are you okay?" Marcia asked. "Yeah, I just need to talk to my father once he wakes up." "Okay, I guess if it's that important, I'll just call you later." "That's probably a good idea," he said with a distant look in his eyes. Later that night, Daniel goes to check on his father yet again, but he still hasn't gotten up from his midday nap. He checks at the time to notice that his mom is working late again. "Maybe I should call Marcia," he said. As he headed to the phone, he noticed most of those burnt fibers around the living room. He moved closer to where the phone was. and there were burnt and twisted remains of the Furby. He stopped dead in his tracks. "Dead dear is back." The mouth creaked open to speak in the voice of the elderly Frances, but the voice seemed to be more clear now than ever, as if she was standing right there. Daniel's blood ran cold, his heart was beating hard, and the pool of sweat began to take form under his clothes. "Aunt Frances," Daniel Bellin whispered, "what are you doing?" "Dead dear is hungry, and you are still young. My forest is now here. My hunger is as well. Blood, fire, time. Now guess what I need." A few hours later, Mom arrived home. There is an ambulance outside the home. She quickly leaves her still running car and heads over to the house. When she gets closer, she saw police cars as well. With panic flowing through her body, and with fleet of foot run, she manages to get to the police line. "What's going on?" "Ma'am," the police officer said, "your husband is dead. Your son is in shock and is unconscious, and someone was murdered in your home. All they could find of the person who was murdered was his skull." Lauren felt a powerful depression that added about 200 pounds to her body. She began to get lightheaded and dizzy, and then the officer said, "Ma'am, are you okay?" Before the officer could finish his sentence, Lauren saw the world shrink and the sky falling to the earth. She had passed out. When she awoke, she saw Daniel in the bed next to her in the hospital. "Daniel," she tried to speak, but couldn't. Her dry throat ached to the point of tears. She found and pressed the nurse button. Within moments, a nurse came into the room. "It's good to see that you're finally awake. My name is Sue, and I'm your nurse for the day," the kind nurse spoke gently. After getting something to drink, she asked the nurse about everyone. Ralph was dead, believed to be from cardiac arrest, but had major burns on his back. Daniel was unconscious and suffered from severe trauma to the head, neck, and back. "Who was murdered in the home?" Lauren finally got around to asking. "I'm not supposed to tell you this, but they couldn't identify the body. It was covered in so much of Daniel's blood that the samples all said that it belonged to Daniel." The nurse wiped her face and continued to say, "Plus, your son has apparently had several strokes, as his skin sags on his face." Lauren looked over at her son and noticed the light shining off his eyes, as they appeared to be open. "I'll leave you two alone. Please let me know if I can do anything. I'll be back in here in a little while. I need to get Daniel's vitals." Lauren goes over to see that his eyes were indeed open. His eyes are just as beautiful as before, but they are a little dull. The trauma must have caused damage to his eyes as well. "How are you feeling?" Daniel looks in her direction and forces his frown into a smile, as if to say, "I'm okay, but I don't want you to know that I'm really not. That tube is uncomfortable, but please don't pull at it. You could hurt yourself." He nods in agreement. "I need you to step outside while I get his vitals. The doctor wants to see you. You can take your IV with you," the nurse says, just as happy as when Lauren awoke. As she speaks to the doctor, she hears the nurse speaking to what sounds to be a raspy person and a little too high-pitched for her son. The trauma has left him with brain damage, moderate blindness, with strokes, and the need for reconstructive facial surgery. His girlfriend visited you and left some gifts, but he can't eat the box of candy that Marcia left him yet. His mouth is also messed up. The doctor spoke to her for a bit longer. After they had conversed for a bit, she went back to her room to see Daniel, but as she returned, she saw the youth yawn, and what was inside the mouth was broken teeth, a ripped tongue, and a burnt, fur-covered skeleton of a Furby. Lauren screamed so hard that the guards were alerted and ran toward the room. But before they got there, Daniel spoke in the voice of the ant. "I eat children and their souls." The voice changed to yet another raspy old woman's voice that said, "I am dead, dear, and now I will start on the children of America. Nobody will believe you, as they will lock you away." Daniel's eyes began to glow an amber color, and the hint of the Furby's eyes can be seen inside of his eyes. His face bears a striking resemblance to Frances's face, and when she blinked, his face was still normal. Daniel spoke in his normal voice, but slurred, with skin sagging a little bit off of his face. "Mom, please calm down. I asked if you were okay."